Hi, I'm Dr. John Douillard, and welcome to LifeSpa.com, where we prove the ancient medical wisdom of Ayurveda with modern science. In today's podcast, I have a special guest, the founder of Elephant Journal magazine, online magazine, Waylon Lewis. He's a special guest, and let me tell you a little bit about him. He's written a beautiful book, a best-selling book called
Things I Would Like to Do With You.
Things I Would Like to Do With You, which I got to tell you is not what you think when you hear the title, really, but it's just absolutely a beautiful book where Waylon pours his heart out in terms of what love is really about. And we're going to talk about that today, but let me tell you a little bit about Waylon first. Okay, Waylon Lewis, and I should say that Waylon is extremely loved here in Boulder. Everyone knows him, loves him, likes him. He's a very special person in our community, so I'm really happy to have him here. It's long overdue, by the way. He likes to think he snowshoes hut to hut and builds nailless tiny houses and trees while drinking wild crafted teas from herbs he gathers in the woods besides his faithful hound, Redford, Red Dog in your book, right?
Yep, that's right.
Yep. But in reality, he works on a laptop, rarely travels, drinks black coffee, eats vegan without preaching about it much, bikes 365 days a year, which is absolutely true, climbs lazily, yogas clumsily, and runs Elephant Journal. He knows a little bit about love, he says, but he just wrote a whole book about it, and I got to tell you, it's special. So we really want to pick up a copy of that. Born in Boulder to a poor and generous single mom, he trained in Buddhism, lived in Vermont, studied stuff in Boston, worked at Shambhala, which is the Buddhist publisher, this and that, founded Elephant Journal. His only real ambition, though, is to help create an enlightened society through his words, which is what Elephant Journal magazine, online Elephant Journal magazine is all about. You definitely want to check that out. And I'd like to just start having Waylon just tell us a little bit about how you founded Elephant Journal, for folks who don't know what it is, how they can get kind of hooked up to Elephant Journal and start seeing what you're doing.
Yeah, so how I founded Elephant is a long story. This was pre-Kickstarter, which to me revolutionized entrepreneurship, crowdfunding. But I was super poor. I couldn't crowdfund. It didn't exist. And I partnered with this guy who was trying to start a local, like Boulder local yoga black and white magazine called Yoga in the Rockies. And he was a great guy, didn't have any idea about the magazine or journalism business, but was a smart business guy. And he was so smart, he quit almost immediately because he saw there was almost no money in it. And like a fool, I had partnered with him. I was like the journalism magazine guy. I had studied that in Boston. And I continued it. I enjoyed it. And, I got to feature people like yourself. You were a columnist, and interview you over the years. And the magazine grew and went national in Whole Foods and bookstores, but at our peak we were only reaching maybe 75,000 people. And as you know, you have a good video or a good podcast or what we do, you can reach many, many more people. I wanted to reach billions, not even millions, let alone 75,000. I have no ambition to just reach the choir of the choir.
Right.
If you want to change the world for the kinder, you got to listen and have tough conversations with people who disagree with you. So I went online to elephantjournal.com and really haven't looked back. It's been fun. We reach millions and millions of people every month, every day practically, on all of our different social mediums. And now we're transitioning from being a big blog to being a very small platform. So meaning up until now, we've been kind of dependent on Facebook or dependent on Twitter, where we've won national awards. Facebook, we have 8 million fans. By comparison, MSNBC has like 3 million. And we're not corporate. We're just, on our laptop in a cafe figuring it out. But we're still dependent on these social medias, and they've proven themselves again and again not to be mission driven, unless you say their mission is just profits.
Yeah.
So it's time to save the world from ourselves, and it's more fun to save the world than to be a part of the problem anyway. So we're transitioning into becoming a kind of social media itself. And that's exciting. I'm excited about that.
What you just said, I think, is so important because, what social media has done to our culture, particularly because of profit, they're cashing in on, of course, reward chemistry, but positive and negative reward chemistry. So they're going to cash on making you look really pretty, but they're also going to cash in on making you look really ugly. And so they're tapping into the psychology of people in a really gross, deep, way that is really, hurting people in their psychology. And I'm just curious if you've run across that from that, because I see what you're saying is you just want to do the right thing for the right reasons, and you're so incredibly ethical from that perspective. Has that been on your radar screen, just what social media is doing, like the whole Facebook? Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, I literally teach, our tagline is how to use social media without being used by it.
Oh wow, that's so awesome.
That's our whole mission. And for example, any political conversation that happens on social media becomes divisive. Right. The most extreme voices are the loudest, and it's very boring to talk about solutions and caring and kindness and all these things. But if you talk about personalities and hating one another, that's really popular.
Yeah.
So yeah, and Facebook executives who have quit have said straight up, and this is no surprise, Facebook is open about this, that they really targeted people's psychology, not from a point of view of making our fundamental goodness shine brighter, but from the point of view of trying to exploit people's psychology so they stay on the site. I mean, that's the whole purpose. And there's just the more clicks, and they don't even care if you have a good time there, if you learn good things, they just want you clicking.
Yeah.
So we're going to become, in a way you have to, this goes back to Joseph Campbell or myth making, in some way you have to engage the monster. We're going to become a social media site in a way, but we're going to be oriented less around quarterly returns or me becoming a multi-billionaire, and more about paying thousands and thousands of writers a month. Writers deserve to be paid, and the writers will be paid according to sort of reader votes. Right. And the votes are based not just on popularity, but all kinds of, I call it the ecosystem. Right. So the votes are diversely apportioned so that quality wins, basically. Because for years, the blogs that went on Huffington Post or something are like 10 hot side boobs, or kittens being cute. Yeah. It's all kittens or sex, or puppies or sex. Yeah. We want important issues, health and wellness, climate change, agreeing to disagree respectfully. We want that to win.
Yeah, enlightened technology.
Yeah, just being a benefit.
So tell us a little bit more about Elephant. Like, how many subscribers you guys have now?
Yeah, so we call ourselves the world's largest mindfulness site. It would be hard to dispute that. We're also probably the only one, even among our rivals who we love, we want more rivals, not fewer, that is truly independent, no investment. And that's important because once you take investment, you almost always, 99% of the time, are building the business to make money so they can sell. Yeah. And that's really not our ambition. Yeah. And I've had offers and rejected it. So it's really, we're walking our talk there. Yeah. We're really about community. So yeah, we have many millions of readers a month, anywhere from over the past 10 years, 3 million to 23 million unique readers a month. And like I said, many, many fans on Facebook, and we've won national awards on Twitter, and our YouTube channel blew up when we paid attention to that. Instagram is now more of our focus. Yeah. But really anywhere we can be of benefit, basically. Yeah, and
it's an awesome, I've been writing for you for forever.
Very popular writer over here.
We actually give Waylon and Elephant Journal our articles before we post them. So just so you know, you can go there first and get our stuff. But it has tons of great writers, tons of great information. And what I also like you said before is not speaking to the choir. Like, you know, when I wrote a book called Eat Wheat, which was very controversial, and I contacted all the gluten-free folk out there, best-selling gluten-free authors, and nobody wanted to have an interview with me.
Wow.
No one wanted to have that discussion until
Wow.
David Perlmutter, author of Grain Brain, who I've known him for years. We actually had this really incredible debate.
I bet.
And it was great.
Yeah.
You know, and we banged it out the first time, back and forth. My mother said I won it, that debate, so clearly I did. But the point was, is like, and he was like, this is so cool, because he even noticed that the only people I get asked to, you know, to interview with are people who are the same, have the same basic message. And it's so beautiful that you're on board with, hey, let's stir it up. Let's have those discussions about, you know, what the differences are, because if we don't expose our differences, how are we ever going to come together, you know?
Well, it's just good. You know, I care more about Elephant in a way than myself, so I don't want to be the voice of Elephant. I don't want my opinions to dictate what we do. So I'm vegan. Elephant is by no means vegan. We have many recipes that are and aren't, but we do have common ethics. We don't just say, oh, whatever, factory farming is okay. We try to be, you know, we're about the mindful life, so we try to focus on, well, how can we all come together? Sure, we're going to have differences and disagreements, but it's not up to me to make the whole world vegan. The world won't do that.
Right.
So can we just find common ground? Health, you know, environment, factory farming, things that we support and that we don't.
Now, Buddhism is a big part of, is that, and how does Buddhism weave into Elephant Journal, the philosophy?
Well, the Dalai Lama has a quote about Buddhism where he says, he's speaking to someone who's interested in becoming Buddhist. And he says, don't become Buddhist. Explore your own tradition, your own life more fully. And if you still want to become Buddhist after that, maybe. But you don't need to become Buddhist. Just be a good person. And I think that's Elephant's approach, is Buddhism, thank God, no pun intended, is not trying to convert people. We don't really, frankly, care. What we do care about is, like our slogan at Elephant is, may it be of benefit, may we be of benefit. If we're all in our different ways being of benefit, you know, some people are farmers, some people are plumbers, some people are politicians, some people are teachers. We're not all going to be the same. So some people are Christians, some people are Muslim. That's beautiful, you know. What isn't beautiful is the hate that can arise, which often is when I say my way is the only right way. And that's weird. That's a very weird attitude.
Yeah, and I bet if people were to, like you said, dive into their own culture and their own religion, they would probably find the truths of Buddhism pretty close, you know?
Yeah, and that's the cool thing is then, you know, the mystical traditions, it's about all these people in different traditions who've gone deeper and find that they have tons in common. Oh, we're all about kindness. Oh, we're all about, you know. So what I do think is valuable in Buddhism, which we do try to make available and accessible on Elephant, is meditation, being present, not getting caught up in my selfish, self-involved thoughts. And they're not selfish in the bad way. Like a lot of people say, you know, to their children, like, you're selfish, you're a bad kid. It's not that. That's a weird attitude that we have about ourselves often. It's selfish in the sense that, you know, my Buddhist teacher says, the ego's mantra is, what about me, what about me? It's just insecure. We're just self-obsessed. Not always out of vanity, but out of, we're just insecure.
There's an old saying, and this ties into your book about love, you know, what I'd like to do with you, which is that I love you, but it's no concern of yours, you know, which means that, you know, why am I loving you? Am I loving you for that reward so you love me back and I'm dependent on that, I'm going to manipulate like crazy to get that? Or I just love you but it's no concern of yours. So you wrote this incredible book. And I was like, Waylon wrote a book. And I was like, and I started reading it and I was just like, this is poetry. And he wrote 31 chapters or something like that. Some crazy number of chapters about love and like what I want to do with you in the morning, what I want to do with you in the evening, what I want to do with you after breakfast, you know, when you go away in the morning and at the end of the book and sort of towards the end of your life. There's a whole thing. And I got to tell you, I've written a lot of articles about love. He poured his heart out. He wrote a whole book about it. There's just so much content in there, so many ways to look at it. So I want to know, like, if you're okay with, you know, why did you write that book and what were you trying to accomplish or with that book? What was the goal Was it just poor? Because I don't think it was beautiful. I mean, it touched me reading it, and I'm sure it touched a lot of other people. But I wonder where you came from starting to write that book, because like not everybody just throws their heart on the table and go, here you go. You know, like you know, it's like really vulnerable.
It is, yeah. I love speaking to audiences.
Yeah.
And I did a book reading, I think my first book reading for the book, and I was so uncomfortable because it's so vulnerable.
Yeah.
So I had gone on this great date years ago when and I had been writing like 5 times a day, 3 times a day, 1 time a day, whatever, you know, writing on Elephant for years. And I went on this date, and it was that first date feeling, which you may not remember, but it's that very first, you have no idea where it's going to go. You're pretty sure it won't work out from the point of view of experience, but it's very fresh. It's like that little bud of a flower in spring, you know. It might snow on it, who knows. And I came back and I just wrote what would become the first chapter, things I would like to do with you in the woods. And it was about that date kind of, and the feeling.
Yeah.
And it was also about my feeling of just being exhausted. I was working so hard. And considering how much I was writing at the time, and I was a pretty popular writer on Elephant, the reaction of people to that blog, what would become a chapter, was so unlike anything I'd ever written. I was like, what is happening here? Like I had struck a very wide and deep vein of gold, you know, that I think so many people, we were talking about this before, are wondering about what love looks like in 2019, what love looks like post Mad Men. You know, we don't want the man to bring home the bacon and the woman to be bored drinking martinis at home dealing with the kids, and the man to be having affairs and the woman to be having affairs. There was this sort of disconnect in the Mad Men era.
Yeah.
And that's only one version. There are many good relationships, but what is different in a good relationship versus one where you're kind of buying into these gender roles? And I had the Buddhist teachings about relationships, so I held up my experience. That's just where those chapters came from. I kind of wrote about relationships, good and bad, and held them up to the Buddhist teachings, and kind of I was trying to learn. I think that's why the book worked. Is I'm no expert on love. I don't think anyone is really, but we all are. On the other hand, we all have our own experience. So I wrote about my experience. I didn't pretend to have answers. I didn't, and so it was an exploration.
So what did you discover?
Basically, the exploration was, what do you look for if you're looking to, as I was and am, looking to settle down at some point? You know, I started writing it when I was probably 39 or 37 or something. I'm 44 now. And, you know, I've had a lot of relationships. I love dating. I love being alone. I love, all that part is pretty easy for me. I mean, it's still hard, and there's games and BS and, you know, loneliness sometimes. But what's really hard for me is not commitment, but, you know, I take marriage very seriously. My parents were divorced very early. It was an awful relationship, awful. So, but I had in the Buddhist community many examples of great relationships. And so I wanted to get married and stay married, and I still do, and I'd like to have children, and I wanted to kind of figure it out ahead of time. Not figure it all out and have it be perfect, but figure out enough that I could, when I said I do, I could mean it. And knowing that our relationship would change and evolve and devolve and shift, but whatever I was committing to was the bedrock that I could commit to for life. Instead of, you know, I don't really want to get divorced and all that. It's a lot of acrimony and lawyers. And,
so I just think it's so crazy, because what I did was so different than that.
Yeah.
I met my wife in India, and we were there for 3 weeks together.
Yeah.
She had to go back home. 3-4 months later, I left India to go be with her.
Yeah.
We were together for 6 weeks and got married.
Yeah.
I brought her back to India with me, and now we have 6 kids 30 years later.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you,
good.
No, it was really hard, because it's always been great, and we're compatible. But what you're doing is what I did along the way,
Right.
which is I tried to figure out, like when things weren't going right, I would just like, well, if she would just do a little more of that and a little less of this and a little less of that, it would be good. But she's got to change because I'm like, I got it together and like, come on, like get with it, you know? Yeah. And that would never happen, you know?
Sure.
So one day I realized that, you know, sort of like I was doing a detox and I was like in this kind of that calm space where you could see a little more clearly. And I looked and I was like, oh, it's me. Like I wasn't giving myself fully to that relationship. You know, I was like, you know, if you would just change a little bit, it would all be great. But I didn't take the risk to be delicate and to be vulnerable and open the petals of my flower and let who I am out, because that's scary for us, because what if they don't love you back? Then you're screwed.
Oh,
you know?
So scary.
Right.
Yeah.
So I had to start realizing that I had to start giving in ways that I didn't give. And you talk about being selfish, we're all like hardwired to sort of be selfish, right? And I had to figure that part out. And that was the journey that I took. And in fact, teach to my patients, and in fact, teach to myself still every day, still trying to figure out ways to open more, give more, love more, you know. Yeah. And but you have chosen to sort of run all that rewiring before, which is going to be amazing. But don't wait too long.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Well, the other thing is I've been a workaholic, as I'm sure you have been, but I've been in many relationships where, you know, initially what I do is attractive to my partner. And within a couple weeks, they're like, get off the laptop. You're so boring. I thought you were a fun guy. I hate this. I want to go camping. I want to go out. And I hate that feeling of being guilt tripped and or disappointing someone, let alone putting children on top of that. I was like, there's no way I'm going to build Elephant halfway. Yeah. I need to build it to be a benefit. And there's no way I'm going to build it and really disappoint someone continually as I would have done. So Elephant's now got a great staff, and it's a more fertile time.
That might be why in Ayurveda they say even for men and for women, that's the best time to get married is when 40. Because like you sort of,
that's interesting.
You know, if you were working hard from your 20s, like in the old days, you have 20 years to sort of make it, establish it, then you can kind of like just kick back a little bit and then go have a family life.
That's how I've felt the last 4 years. For the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't just coasting on my adrenals or something.
I love that. I mean, what I did was completely reckless and random and totally throwing the dice. It was like Russian roulette, you know. Where what you're doing is way smarter and wiser than I ever did. But you're doing your career, which is like so Vedic in a way. That's what you're supposed to do. And now you're really researching and writing about how you can create a relationship that'll be lasting. To experience true love, right? That's the goal, right? To experience that communion of, right?
From a Buddhist point of view, the goal is complicated. The goal is to be a benefit to the world, and that your partner is your best friend and your ally in doing that. And not best friend, just. Obviously there's romantic and intimacy, but the vision is that your partnership, you're walking on the path to be of benefit. And you're maybe holding hands or being affectionate while you do so, but there's some space between you two. You're always individual people. So, you know, I was talking about the Buddhist notion of love is not a lifelong picnic. It's not this sort of PDA, public display of affection for life. You know, that's a fun thing to do, for sure, in the back of a movie theater when you're falling in love, whatever, or hopefully for the rest of your life. That kind of passion is great. But you're also individuals. Like you were saying, you have to take some responsibility for your own stuff and not just, so some vulnerability or loneliness is actually a beautiful thing for life. You don't just sort of, two flames become one is often an image that's used, particularly in Christianity. Buddhism is like two flames, that's great. And maybe you flicker with each other, but you're, you know, the purpose of a relationship from a Buddhist point of view is to be of benefit, not to just get self-obsessed.
So the relationship then, because when you're having a relationship and then you bicker and you have these issues, those are, from the Vedic perspective, this is really cool. Ellen and I do a lot when we talk together. Like I said, Houston interviewed me a lot, and
many times,
like you would have the Buddhist perspective, I'd have sort of the Vedic perspective. There's like a mountain between us. That was sort of the same thing, but said in a different way. So the Vedic perspective would be that is one of my other favorite old sayings is that, you know, to the extent that something affects you, is to the extent that it's your karma, which means action. So if she's bickering, or we're bickering, then that's affecting me. So it's an opportunity for me to take action. And that action would have to come from my true self versus my manipulative self, right?
Right.
So that becomes, that the relationship itself becomes an opportunity for, what they might call enlightenment or growth or contentment or joy, just having a good time. Like not, I don't like the idea of trying to get enlightened, because I don't see it happen very often. But I do like the idea of us moving through our emotional baggage so we can be free to really feel and experience trust, truth, love, with another person. That sort of creates, like, if I feel safe in my love for you, then I'm going to be safe to go out here too, in the world. So explain that Buddhist part, because if it's two flames, where everybody's like, the Vedas like, I don't know if it's like going to one flame, but it's definitely using each other's flame to grow.
For sure, that sounds great.
Okay.
I think the two flames thing is a little bit codependent. Like,
right.
You know what? We're two separate people. We both eat, we both poop, we both exercise, we both can have our own experience. My partner can go for a hike without me. She can have a social life without me. She can do it with me as well. But it can become a little controlling to think you're one human being. We're not. And, we're born alone, we die alone. That's often used in a negative way, but it's actually kind of a beautiful thing if you're okay with that vulnerability. And I read this quote in New York Times. They do these little interviews of people on the street sometimes, and they asked this old couple how they had stayed married for so long. And the guy, who was like 85, said, "I wake up every morning and I look at her with admiration." And I love that word, admiration. It's not affection, it's not love, it's not passion. Admiration implies a little distance, like you're still admiring that person. And if you allow distance, absence makes the heart grow fonder, but you can do it with each other. The space actually creates, it's not dead space. It's pregnant space. It allows space for passion. It's hard to feel sexually aroused by someone who's in your, wearing the same hoodie as you all the time, and you have this sort of stale feeling. Having a little bit of appreciation or admiration, and it allows room for humor. You need a little bit of space for humor, usually, a little perspective. Space for healing. So space is a beautiful thing. Like when you dance, having a little bit of space makes it fun. Whereas if you're just dancing like some weird, clingy thing, it's not that fun. But it's,
and I wonder, there's a big trend these days towards more open relationships, and it's not just, from what I understand, not just like having sex with anybody you want. It's having sort of what you said, that freedom to just be like, hey, I love you, and if your thing is to be with somebody else or go with, I'm not going to try to control you. It's sort of where the foundation of that comes from. Where I just don't want to be in control of you and manipulate you to love me, and I need you in my life. Does that make any sense? Do you? I mean, how do you?
It's a popular subject on elephantjournal.com.
I bet it is.
Open relationships. Yeah, I think from the Buddhist perspective,
you must have written about that.
I haven't written about it. I'm not that interested in it. I think from a Buddhist point of view, the Buddha always talks about the middle way between extremes. So you can be cloying and clingy, or you can be like, whatever is cool. And to give respect to the open relationships, like you said, there's some structure around it often. I've seen a lot of open relationships with friends, and it's never worked out. What does working out mean? Who knows? They may have a different definition of that. But to me, or from the Buddhist perspective, I think, number one, there's not a moral problem with it. I feel like a lot of people have a moral, ethical problem with open relationships. Buddhism isn't that heavy-handed. Like, if that works for you, go nuts. If being clingy somehow works for you, for both of you, I guess go nuts. Good luck. But the middle way is more like, so in Buddhism they say your spouse or your partner is the only person who cares about you enough to get to know you super well, so they know your fertilizer, your poop. they know your neurosis, they know everything about you, and they can communicate on behalf of the whole phenomenal world to you. Like, hey, you have some, spaghetti on your face.
Yeah.
And no one else will say that to you.
Right.
And maybe they would, like my best friend Dave, he might give me hard messages from time to time, and he does, but he doesn't, and that's a great thing in a loving friendship, but he doesn't know me in and out the way that an intimate relationship does.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I wonder if it's
I think you lose a bit of that messenger of the whole phenomenal world with an open relationship. If you're kind of spending your time in 2 relationships or many,
maybe it's
you might lose a little of that.
The pendulum thing, right? Where people grew up watching their parents in this sort of clinging, not working relationship, right? So then the pendulum
locked in.
Swings way over. We're not going to do that, and we're going to be free, and you can do whatever you want, but I love you, and as long as we keep this love thing together, and that maybe it can work. And I'm still not quite sure how when you sort of do fall in love in an open relationship, how, I don't know, there's sort of a major vulnerability there around that person's deciding to, whatever, hook up with somebody just because, and how do you know? I don't know. It's just, I guess I don't have that kind of freedom or courage or willing to be that vulnerable in a relationship,
No, real talk. I mean, I think all of us would do open relationships if we could feel a way to do it in a sane way without extra servings of drama.
Yeah.
But, it's a tough one. So anyone who does it, I salute.
Yeah, right. If you can make it work, it's incredible because it does so many. I mean, I think fundamentally the idea is that you grow and you're fearless, and of course that would be you're not afraid that she's going to go. If it's really truly her wish to go out and do something else, then I want her to be happy. I truly care about her in that way,
But the really powerful and cool thing, and I should not be saying this to you, because you know more about this than me, but is commitment in this day and age, actually doubling down when it's hard, saying, wow, I would really like to get away right now, and maybe I will go for a walk and give myself some space, which is healthy, but we're gonna figure this out.
Yeah.
So again, from a Buddhist point of view, talking about spirituality, Trungpa Rinpoche, my parents' teacher, would talk about spiritual materialism, and that's defined as almost open relationships. Like you go to the spiritual salad bar, and you take a little Jesus, you take a little this, you take a little that, but only the nice stuff that is fun.
Yeah.
You don't ever take anything hard or challenging, ever.
Yeah.
But then you don't grow. And then it just becomes this weird, we all know people like that, this weird positivity soup that actually is a little bit toxic and kind of avoided in reality. And we learn by confronting our resistance and not confronting in a macho way, but being vulnerable and leaning in, which is what Pema Chodron, another wonderful teacher, talks about. And, I know that when I have a tough talk with my current partner and we get through it, I feel delighted. I'm like, oh, wow, I can grow a little bit. I don't have to be stuck. I can tell her this hard thing, and it can be okay.
Yeah. It's so crazy. This culture is like a mile wide and an inch deep, right? Everybody just skims on the surface, and nobody's willing to dig a hole deep. There's another old Vedic saying that says that the pain and the fear are directly across from the bliss, and the reason for the pain and the fear is to get your attention, so you can go to it, and then through it, and then ask who you are, and then let who you are out, and then connect with them at the level of who you are, not some armored up version of yourself you think they're going to like, right? Because we keep manipulating ourselves to make us look or think that we're more appealing, right? But how do we really connect? You got to go through the pain. You got to go through the fear. And people just like when my mom, I think I was, when my mom watches this, she's going to be pissed at me, but I was like in high school, and this girl dumped me for like the football player guy, and I was like really broken up over it. And my mom said, just, like go to bed. Like just like that was it. Like it was nothing. Like just like you'll sleep on it and get out of here. Like no, I don't want to talk to you about it. Like there was nothing. And now kids would go and get antidepressants.
But kind of like you'll be fine.
Yeah. It's like like
sleep
it's like I'm sort of feel bad for you, but it'd be okay. Go to bed.
Yeah, I mean, if you're an older person looking at your kid, like you may be now, you've been through so many love things. You're like, you'll be fine. You're 18, you're 14, you'll be fine.
But now they take them and give them Prozac and antidepressants, and they go smoke weed, or they do something to just numb themselves so they can just check out. And what you're saying is, how do we get how do we, and what you write about in your journal is a lot of how do you check in and become more mindful, right? And that's a big part of what you're trying to do is get people to be, I tell my kids that I use an old Deepak Chopra quote, which is that the space between ourselves is proportionally as void as intergalactic space. And they're going like, what? I'm going, yeah, like, why don't you investigate that? How do we get the pendulum to swing back so we don't just lose ourselves in this outer world?
Well, and that brings us back to the social media stuff, because Facebook and all these sites are Instagram. They're built on trying to get you to scroll, to do everything, what do you say, a mile wide and an inch deep?
Yeah.
Not even an inch deep, just like, a centimeter deep.
Yeah.
They want to distract you. It's the distraction culture.
Yeah.
Because they make money off of that.
Totally. But how do you change the culture to have them see that they're being manipulated when we're tapping into the fundamental weakness in humankind to want to be liked? We have this hardwire to want to be liked and appreciated, right?
We do, but even more fundamentally, we want to be happy. We want to be able to breathe one breath instead of just like being in this shallow kind of fear state all day. And I think that, I don't know if you've seen Black Mirror. It's like a new Twilight Zone. So they show this world where everything, maybe you saw that episode, is evaluated according to popularity and likes. So when you greet the barista in the morning, you're like, you see their rating, and based on your smile, if they're nice to you, you give them a like point or whatever. So we can go that direction, or we can go the direction of really getting present with your morning coffee or tea, or your lover, or your bicycle ride, or your tough conversation with a colleague, or your, when you're driving. I know I don't drive. I notice when people drive, it seems weird to me, but probably no one else, but I don't drive ever. So I get in a car and there's like distractions. They have their phone here, they have their thing here, they have the music. There's a lot going on considering that they're driving a tin can at 60 miles per hour or more or less. You're like, and when I'm biking, I don't want any distractions. I want to be present and enjoy
know
it.
your phones and all that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. They're on the phone, whatever.
Listening to music, and how can they hear it? I mean,
they're like,
crazy.
what do you want to listen to? I'm always like, I'm okay. Like, I'd love to just talk and maybe look around. And music isn't bad, but if you're going to enjoy some song, why not enjoy the hell out of it? Like, really get into it.
Yeah.
That's what I do with music.
Yeah.
So I think the distraction culture is stressful. And I think the more we kind of, you're the expert on this, but just fully enjoy stuff instead of multitasking. We're smarter. Like New York Times did a great article on how people learn, or how people are trained in a job. And they said, learn slowly and you'll learn faster. So really just slow down and learn everything. Like whenever we're training new staff at Elephant, they're like, I'm sorry, I'm so slow. I need to get better. You're like, just slow down, really get every piece of it. And that might take a couple weeks. And then suddenly you'll be like, you'll be really fast.
Yeah. I was dyslexic, terrible reader as a kid. Don't really like reading novels because I just don't read them. Then I went to chiropractic college and I had to read like textbooks, and they were like massive. And I had to read them like one word at a time, because they were so dense,
Right.
And then I realized that I can read this because I can read one word at a time and just go slow. I had permission to go slow.
Right.
Where I'm reading a novel, feel like you have to frantically through it because you're reading so slow. I always felt self-conscious, And now what I do for a living is I read journals. That's all I do. I just live on PubMed, just read real slow,
And that became your gift.
Yeah, it was like really cool. I think that's it. We just have to slow down the culture, but and so this is the question: how you mentioned that we have to go, through that discomfort, and it's sort of like a rite of passage to stop needing to be loved and starting to sort of be willing to be vulnerable enough to be the love. How do you get people to cross that line? It just seems like everybody's so addicted to wanting them to love me or them to appreciate me. How do what's the Buddhist way or the elephant way to get people to see the light in a way, to realize that that's where the happiness you talked about really is going to come from, because it ain't going to come from out there.
No. And it can't come from out there until you're okay in here.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you can fully enjoy your gelato or your...
Yeah,
I would say, I have this quote that I talk about called something like the present moment is where the brilliance happens, or something like that.
Yeah.
Anything you've ever fully enjoyed
Yeah.
is because you've been present. You can have the best meal in the world, and if you're like, blah, 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 and on your phone, you won't even taste it.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. So how do you get people to do that? That's such a beautiful point.
Yeah.
Like, how do you really enjoy, like, think about when people out there thinking, okay, when was the last time I really, like you said, with the music or the gelato, when was the last time you really enjoyed that one thing?
Yeah.
And you didn't need like my phone blowing up or whatever. Yeah.
Well, my girlfriend right now is crazy. Actually, even my ex-girlfriend, who I can think of from a few years back, when they eat, it's almost like it's weird to me because I'm very speedy often.
Yeah.
They're so slow and mindful about every bite, and they enjoy it so much. They're like emoting about the food as they eat it. And I always look at that. I find it inspiring. I'm like, wow, you can really enjoy your meal, like a lot. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's because they're just totally present. They're chewing it,
Yeah.
they're smelling it,
Yeah.
they're appreciating it, they're thinking about the farm or who made it. You know, they're, what else is it? So Kripalu, the yoga center, I just went there, and they had like 6 things in mindful eating, which like changed my
On
life.
a little flip card on the tables, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, slow down is the first one, take a couple breaths, and I'm already off
Like,
the races. I'm like,
Yeah.
and then gratitude, you think about the farmers or the nature or the waiter or the cook, you think about all that. Then you appreciate it, you look at it, By that time I'm half done with my meal already.
I know.
And then you smell it, which is a weird thing. I would never, I literally lift my plate up now. Then you chew it, that's my favorite part, which I never really paid attention to.
Yeah.
I would eat quantity because I would miss half of it.
Yeah.
Which is overeating, right?
And then that's the whole Indian thing, eating with your hands. So when you eat with your hands, you sort of can't flip through your magazine, you can't read your book,
Right.
you can't change the clicker on the TV screen, you just have to sort of be there in it. I was like you, a very fast eater.
Yeah.
And that was one of the techniques I learned. I would just sit down and come home for lunch and just chill and eat with my hands, and it was just automatically slowed me down.
Yeah.
Because you can't not try it. You just can't go fast and gobble and inhale your food. You sort of can, but there's certain foods that just take a little work either to chew, like really leafy greens take a while to chew, and put in your mouth just takes time and it's messy. But it was a cool way to kind of slow it down and enjoy that, and all that science about how your emotions, that this is the Ayurvedic thing, that your emotions that you impart when you eat your food actually are impregnating those emotional molecules of emotion onto the bugs onto your food. So they're being altered. This isn't a Ayurvedic thing. So they're being altered, and now we have science epigenetically they're being altered by how you feel when you eat that food. It's just sort of, so that whole process of preparing the food, who grew the food, who carried the food, all that stuff, and when you eat it, it all creates Ayurvedic, a sattvic. What's the word in Buddhism for sattva, which is like a loving, giving, kind way of being? Is there a word for that?
Yeah, I don't know. Just gentleness. Trungpa Rinpoche talks a lot about being gentle.
Yeah, with everything.
Yeah, just compassion, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you were asking how do you get people to do that? I think it's sort of pleasure. It's like you really enjoy that meal. Yeah. You really enjoy watching that basketball game on TV. You really enjoy your partner, even if it's a tough conversation. You're more, when we decide to be present, we enjoy everything so much and we make way fewer mistakes, and that's an attractive thing. You don't have to convince a cyclist to be present or someone skiing or whatever, or a climber, because they have to be.
Yeah.
And that's why people go spend money on climbing and skiing, and what they're trying to get present in a funny way.
That's so true.
But we call it adrenaline, which is such a weird patriarchal kind of, it's not necessarily adrenaline, it's that we're finally being fully present.
Yeah.
And time slows down.
That's so interesting. So that's what people are really looking for. It's not the adrenaline rush, it's the finally doing one thing instead of a million things.
Yeah, I think it's so fun.
Yeah.
Like when I'm on my bike negotiating every little pebble on a path, it's just fun. And you could call it adrenaline rush, but it's, I used to interview famous climbers and all these people, and some of them have died since, and I would always ask them, from a Buddhist point of view, life is to be lived of benefit. I was like, stop. I would literally in interviews, I'd be like, why are you doing this? Your life is precious. And it's inspiring and wonderful that you're showing people another way to appreciate life, but you don't have to die doing ever more extreme or macho things. And this has been talked about much more in the culture since, with Alex Honnold, and I wrote like the glorification of danger. And New York Times did this whole kind of series on that. But at the time I would just be like, you don't need to do that crazy thing to be happy. You can go meditate.
Sure.
You can enjoy doing your dishes
Yeah.
with that exact same joy.
It's like that,
literally.
It's like that book, The Rise of Superman. Did you read that book?
No, I
It
haven't.
was a book about extreme athletes and how they were all super addicted. Half of them are dead, and if they didn't die, they're depressed when they're in their 50s because they can't do it anymore. They can't
Right.
dial that up, that whole kind of a thing, and that whole adrenaline rush, and you can't get that focused anymore because the only way they did it was on this
Right.
edge. Where
Right.
the same brain chemistry that they produced was that you get in meditation. Just by dialing it down.
Well, and meditation isn't an end to itself. So through meditation, you can, like I was saying, do the dishes, take the compost out. You can do the most boring laundry, and you could be present. And then, you could be present for music or making love, or like making love is a great example. You could be making love to the most beautiful man or woman in the world, but if you're not present, if you're tripping on some, you're not even really there. It's crazy.
So your book, you
Yeah.
wrote this beautiful book, poured your heart out,
Yeah. I
and
did.
you wrote about this journey of what love is. So where are you now? Like, have you figured it out? Because people would love to know.
I definitely haven't figured it out, but I have figured out what I wrote about in the book, the kind of the tent poles or something of what a genuine love or a genuine relationship might look like. I think I figured out pretty clearly, but it's not like I figured it out like Columbus.
Right.
I think the Buddhist wisdom was there, and it's very ordinary wisdom. It's not theoretical or ideological.
Yeah.
So it's about finding a match, finding equality, and equality isn't meaning that you're both the same. It can be very different, like a dance. And I think what you were talking about, being genuine, that trust, your fundamental human goodness coming out and connecting. And we are selfish in a good way when we take care of ourselves so that we can be a benefit. So you were asking about how can we convince people to come back to this other way. Buddhism would say that other way is Maitri, which is kind of self-care is a big popular thing now. I'm sure you hear about that word all the time. It's great, but it's not necessarily self-care as much as making friends with oneself. It's almost more fundamental. It's not about getting in the bath or doing a face mask or any one thing, or taking a day off or whatever self-care might be. And companies, of course, try to make money off of self-care. Some with good intentions, like yourself, some maybe not at all. When I see these plastic masks that people are putting on, I'm like, oh, come on. But Maitri, M-A-I-T-R-I, we talk a lot about it on Elephant, is really fundamental. It's making friends with your own loneliness. And when I write about that, people say, oh, you mean aloneness. Like when you're lonely, but in a good way, that's aloneness. And I'm saying, no, loneliness, like the hard stuff, the bad, what you view, your ego, your insecurity, views as bad. If you can make friends with that loneliness, then you can fall in love with someone without being codependent. You can appreciate them fully. You're not leaning on them like a crutch. You can lean on them in a romantic way. You can cuddle, but you're not using them. A lot of love is very selfish.
Yeah.
It's really about filling the hole of insecurity in yourself where you're not comfortable going. I think a lot of people, including myself, fall in love so that we don't have to go to a barbecue by ourselves. That's not love.
It's like having a puppy. You can love you all the time, but they don't. It doesn't really work like that with humans.
You see people do that to their dogs. They don't take their dogs on walks. Their dogs go crazy.
Yeah.
Because they are using that dog. They're not being present with it and treating it like a sentient being.
Have you ever done any like those solo, camping trips where you're out in the wilderness by yourself and really experience that loneliness and go through that fear? Have you done that?
I've done Buddhist retreats that would bore anyone to death many, many, many times. It's not as outdoor focused, although some of them are. But incredibly, I've done many, many, many months and years of retreats with silence and all that stuff.
And when you go into silence, what do you experience? Like what what do you discover?
So weirdly, you discover joy and connection with other people, and it's weirdly wonderful. Like, I recommend it.
Yeah.
You would think it would be boring and oppressive, and it can be if you're trying to just survive it and get through it. Like when I did my first month-long meditation retreat when I was 16, I think, and I was like kind of party animal, like nutty kid, and I just tried to survive that month. I didn't really try to meditate. I like played entire basketball games in my head for entertainment. I counted the cars. There's this distant highway that I could see where I was meditating, and I counted the cars going different directions. I was just trying to get through it, and we like drank and partied, and it was miserable. And then I did another one after I'd had my heart broken a little bit, and I was like, oh, maybe this Buddhist stuff actually makes some sense. I had been reading Henry David Thoreau, and they kind of seemed to agree on a lot of things. And I meditated again. It was delightful, and you fall in love with everyone who's also on that retreat, and you're not even talking, you know.
Yeah, it's just like that whole idea of Dhanurveda, pulling back the bow, right? I mean, if we don't take time to pull back the bow, and we're moving it like crazy, and we try to shoot this thing from, you know, with no silence, with no inner silence, it's just a random life. But, you know, seems like what you're talking about here is, you know, being mindful, you know, pulling back the bow, becoming more self-aware, and then starting to take action in a present way, like being really being there in your life. And I think that sounds so simple and so like of course that's the right thing to do.
Well, it is simple.
But nobody, but this is so
but
rare in our culture.
Facebook and Instagram and Google and, you know, Amazon, and none of these companies are encouraging that. They're encouraging the opposite. So you feel a little bit like a trout swimming upstream.
Yeah.
And it is simple, it is obvious, and a lot of wisdom teachers from every tradition and non-tradition all agree on this, that if you want to enjoy life, it's right here.
Yeah. Boy, it's so great that, you know, I think, you know, what Elephant, your magazine does is it just provides, and it's a really cool magazine too. It's definitely not, it's not like a heavy, like you got to stop doing this and this and this. It's completely the opposite. It's actually very full of life, you know, and I think the mindfulness is just woven in a way where people just get the message like, wow, and it's just moving the needle a little bit where people can start to, you know, pull back the bow, establish some awareness and start taking some of that into action in their life and experience the wisdom of Buddhism without a label, you know?
Yeah.
Because
again, I'm not invested in increasing our membership rolls.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
Yeah, I'm only Buddhist because it has some tools that help me do the stuff we've been talking about. But there's many other ways to, like Pema Chodron says, there's many different paths to many different mountains. Like you don't even have to be on the same mountain, but you know, we're all trying to not reach enlightenment. I love that you said that. But like Buddhism says, enlightenment is when you see a stoplight, you're driving a car, and you stop the car. It's just being present, just reacting appropriately to phenomena.
Yeah.
So it's not some great mighty state. It's more just, you're just appreciating the cup of coffee or the tea that you're drinking. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. It's like the Avatar cartoon. Did you watch that cartoon?
I did, but a long time ago, yeah.
Uncle Iroh, he's the tea drinker guy. He's like the old guy who sits there and just drinks tea, and everybody's like killing each other. He's just like, I think I'll have some tea. Just chilling and just loving the whole process. Well, all this crazy stuff's going on. He was just like the eye of the storm. It's pretty cool.
And again, when you're present, it can look like anything. You don't have to be peaceful and drinking tea. You can be surfing.
Sure.
You can be, you know, an entrepreneur. You can be a parent with all that chaos.
Yeah.
And everything, you make fewer mistakes and you're less full of drama. Like my reaction when I don't meditate, I'm very drama heavy.
Yeah.
And when I do, I'm just I have a better sense of humor about my life.
Right. Like the bigger the eye of the storm, the more powerful the winds, right? So if you really have that calm, you can do it surfing or skydiving or whatever it is that you love. But as long as you understand that it's the combination of the dynamic activity with that inner composure and calm, that they're both functioning, coexisting. They're coexisting with each other. And I think that's what wins the war, is us being able to experience both that incredible experience of the outer world that we live in, but not forgetting the inner space that we have in here. You know,
Love
which
that.
is what your book was. The book was so beautiful about love. I mean, I just think that I was so impressed by that book. I think everybody should get a copy.
Thank you.
It's a beautiful book. What I'd love to do with you, right?
Things I would like to do with you.
Things I would like to do with you, and just a really beautiful book about love. And I think I always feel like that's what relationships are about. They're opportunities for us to grow within ourselves, so we can actually then let some of the rays of that light out and love fully with someone we trust, and then go out and feel safe to love the world.
Exactly.
And then people we are loving in the world feel safe to open up their hearts, and they can love their partners, and maybe then love the world. We change the world one heart at a time by giving them permission to feel willing to open something delicate and sensitive up. And what you did in that book was you opened your heart up and you poured it out, which I'm sure is why it's a bestseller, because you opened up to yourself in a way that is really rare, particularly for like a man in this day and age, right? It's pretty special. Yeah. So once again, elephantjournal.com. Subscribe, get on there, read his article, read the articles. It's a great place to be and hang out. And love to have you back sometime.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you, John.
Thank you so much.
Big fan.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you like this video? Don't forget to subscribe and share.
This recording is brought to you by LifeSpa, where ancient Ayurvedic wisdom meets modern science. Get access to free health video newsletters by Dr. John at lifespa.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.